The ancient monitoring station hummed quietly in the darkness of space, its sensors constantly scanning the void for any sign of danger. Lieutenant Commander Giwan had been staring at the same display for 3 hours, watching the endless stream of data that meant nothing to most people but everything to her. She was one of the few officers who actually understood what the numbers meant when the first strange reading appeared on her screen. She almost dismissed it as another equipment malfunction. The deep space sensors were old and false signals. Happened all the time. But this one was different. The frequency was wrong, completely wrong for anything they knew about. "Computer, run a full diagnostic on sensor array 7, she commanded, her voice echoing in the empty monitoring bay. The other officers were in the main command center, probably discussing their next patrol routes or complaining about the terrible food in the station. Cafeteria. The computer's response made her blood run cold. All systems operating normally. Signal confirmed as external transmission. Giwan's hands moved across the holographic controls with practiced speed. Isolating the signal and running it through every analysis program she could think of, the mathematical patterns embedded in the transmission were unlike anything in their current databases, but they felt familiar somehow. She had seen similar sequences before, buried deep in the historical archives. "Admiral Hunwoo, you need to. See this?" she called out, her voice carrying across the pristine white command center. The urgency in her tone made several officers look up from their stations. Admiral Hunwoo had been reviewing supply reports when Chuan's voice cut through the routine chatter. He was a man who had seen too much warfare, his face marked by old battle scars and his eyes holding the weight of difficult decisions. The galactic hegemony had maintained peace for thousands of years, but that peace had come at a price. "Another ghost signal from the Rim territories," he asked, walking over to Giwan's station. The Rim territories were known for strange phenomena. Cosmic radiation that sometimes created signals that looked artificial, but were just random noise from dying stars. "No, sir, this is different." Giwan's fingers moved across the holographic interface, highlighting the mathematical sequences she had discovered. The patterns match historical records from the human Exodus archives. The Admiral's face went pale. Every officer in the hegemony learned about the humans during their basics training, but it was considered ancient history. The human civilization had been destroyed 500,000 years ago, driven from their homeworld by the coalition of species that eventually became the hegemony. It was a dark chapter in galactic history, one that most people preferred to forget. Humans had been different from other species. They adapted too quickly, learned too fast, and expanded their territory at an alarming rate. The other civilizations had felt threatened by their rapid growth and technological advancement. The war that followed was brutal but brief. Earth was destroyed, and the surviving humans fled to the galactic rim in primitive colony ships. "That's impossible," Admiral Hunwoo said, but his voice lacked conviction. He had studied the historical records more thoroughly than most officers. The humans had been resourceful, intelligent, and above all, incredibly stubborn. If any species could survive in the hostile environment of the galactic rim, it would have been them. Before Giwan could respond, the command center doors burst open. Dr. Minji rushed in, her usually neat appearance disheveled and her eyes wide. With excitement and fear, she was the station's chief xenarchaeologist, one of the few people who specialized in studying extinct civilizations. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the signal structure," she said, slightly out of breath from running. "These aren't random transmissions. They're coordinates, and they're getting closer." The command center fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and turned to listen. The implications of Dr. Mingy's words were staggering. If the humans had somehow survived their exile, if they had spent 500,000 years developing new technology in the harsh environment of the galactic rim, then their return could change everything. "How close?" Admiral Hunwoo asked, his military training taking over despite the shock. Dr. Mingy pulled up a holographic star map, showing the path of the signal as it moved through space. "Based on the transmission delays and the increasing signal strength, I estimate they'll reach the outer colonies within 6 months." The Admiral stared at the map, his mind racing through the possibilities. The hegemony had grown comfortable in their dominance, their military focused on maintaining order rather than fighting wars. They had advanced technology, but it was largely untested against a truly dangerous enemy. Send an immediate message to Hegemony Command, he ordered. Priority 1 classification. Tell them the humans are coming home. As the officers scrambled to carry out his orders, Admiral Hunhua couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to face something beyond their understanding. The humans had always been survivors, but 500,000 years of exile in the most dangerous region of the galaxy would have changed them in ways no one could predict. The signal continued to pulse on Juon's screen, steady and purposeful. Like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable, the elevator descended through layers of reinforced metal and stone. Carrying Dr. Minji deeper into the heart of the hegemony's most secure facility, the archives were buried so far beneath the capital world that most people forgot they existed. Only a handful of researchers had clearance to access the oldest records. Even fewer had reason to study the ancient wars that shaped galactic civilization. Commander Tae-young stood beside her, his young face serious as he reviewed the security protocols on his tablet. Had been assigned to help with her research, but Minji suspected the real reason was to watch her. The hegemony leadership was nervous about the signal from the Rim territories. They wanted to make sure no dangerous information leaked out. The archive chamber was massive, filled with holographic storage units that contained millions of years of galactic history. Most of the records were routine administrative files, trade agreements, and diplomatic correspondence. But hidden among them were the classified military reports from the war against humanity, documents that painted a very different picture than the official history books. Access File Cluster 774 Alpha, Minji commanded the archive system. Human Exodus. Final phase documentation. The holographic displays came alive with ancient footage and tactical reports. Minji had seen some of these files before, during her doctoral studies, but she had never examined them with the knowledge that humans might still be alive. Now, every detail seemed important, every overlooked fact potentially critical. The humans launched over 10,000 colony ships, Commander Tae-young observed, reading through the tactical reports with growing amazement. But our ancestors only tracked 3,000 of them to destruction. Minji nodded grimly. She had been studying the numbers all morning, cross-referencing the Coalition's battle reports with sensor logs from the war. The math was clear and terrifying. Exactly. 7,000 ships vanished into the galactic rim. The Coalition assumed they were lost to cosmic radiation and stellar phenomena. The young commander frowned as he scrolled through more files. Would they assume that? The Coalition had the best tracking technology of their time. Because they wanted to believe it, Minji replied. The war had been brutal, and the Coalition leaders were tired of fighting. When the remaining human ships fled toward the galactic rim, it was easier to assume they would die naturally than to chase them into the most dangerous region of space. She pulled up a detailed star map, showing the paths the human ships had taken. The galactic rim was a nightmare of radiation storms, unstable stars, gravitational anomalies that could tear apart any normal spacecraft. No civilization had ever successfully established colonies there because the environment was simply too hostile. But as Minji studied the human escape routes, she began to see a pattern. The ships hadn't fled randomly into the void. They had followed specific courses, avoiding the worst hazards, while heading toward regions where the radiation signatures would mask their presence from Coalition sensors. They had a plan, she whispered. The realization hitting her like a physical blow. This wasn't a desperate retreat. It was a calculated withdrawal. Commander Tae-young looked up from his tablet, confusion clear on his face. What do you mean? Minji began pulling up more files, her hands moving quickly across the holographic interface. Look at the timing. The human ships didn't all leave at once. They departed in waves over several months, each group taking a different route. And look at what they were carrying. The cargo manifests made chilling reading. The ships weren't just carrying refugees fleeing a lost war. They were loaded with Earth's most advanced technology, their greatest scientific minds, and massive industrial fabrication units. It was as if the humans had been preparing for exile long before their final defeat. They were planning this from the beginning, Minji continued, her voice growing more urgent. The humans knew they couldn't win a direct war against the coalition, so they developed a different strategy. They would retreat to the one place their enemies couldn't follow, and they would wait. Seojin, a young intelligence analyst who had been quietly working at another terminal, suddenly looked up with excitement and fear in her eyes. Dr. Minji, you need to see this. I found something in the final communications from Earth. She transferred her data to the main display, showing a transmission that had been sent just hours before Earth's destruction. The message was brief, delivered by a human leader whose face was calm despite the chaos happening around him. We go now to the darkness between stars, but we will return. Time is on our side, and we have nothing but time. The archive chamber fell silent as the implications of those words sank in. This wasn't the desperate cry of a defeated people. It was a promise, delivered with the confidence of someone who believed their plan would work. They've had 500,000 years, Commander Taeyong said quietly. 500,000 years to prepare, to develop new technology, to plan their return. Mingi stared at the holographic display, her mind racing through the possibilities. The humans had always been known for their adaptability and their refusal to give up. If they had somehow survived in the galactic rim, if they had spent 500,000 years growing stronger while the rest of the galaxy grew comfortable and complacent, then their return would be unlike anything the hegemony had ever faced. Need to contact Admiral Hyunwoo immediately, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The galaxy needs to know what's really coming. The space around Kepler-442b had been peaceful for centuries, with only the occasional merchant vessel passing through on its way to the outer colonies. Captain Yoongi had been patrolling this sector for 3 years, and the most exciting thing he had encountered was a smuggler trying to avoid customs inspections. That peaceful routine ended when the sensors began screaming warnings that something impossible was happening. Captain, we're detecting a massive energy signature at the edge of the system, reported Lieutenant Daehan from the sensor station. Her voice was steady, but Yoongi could hear the underlying tension. It's unlike anything in our databases. Yoongi moved to the main display, watching as the readings climbed to levels that should have been impossible. The energy signature was so powerful that it was interfering with their own ship's systems. All vessels maintain formation. Full sensor sweep of the area. The hegemony's rapid response fleet consisted of 12 of their most advanced warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets if necessary. They were the pride of the military, equipped with the latest technology and crewed by the best officers in the galaxy. But as they approached the source of the energy signature, Yoongi began to feel very small. The first human ship appeared without warning, materializing from empty space like something from a nightmare. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of Yoongi's flagship, and its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The metal looked smooth and organic, as if it had been grown rather than built. Sir, the ship's hull is causing some kind of optical distortion, reported Commander Hound from the tactical station. Our targeting systems can't get a solid lock on it. Yoongi stared at the alien vessel, trying to process what he was seeing. The ship didn't just look advanced, it looked impossible. The hull seemed to bend the light around it, creating a shimmering effect that made his eyes water if he looked at it too long. Broadcasting standard first contact protocols, he announced, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Yoongi of the Hegemony Defense Force. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came instantly, but not through their communication systems. The voice spoke directly into their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. It was a woman's voice, calm and measured. But there was something ancient and powerful about it that made Yoongi's skin crawl. We are the children of Earth, forged in the fires of exile and tempered by 500,000 years of preparation. We return not as supplicants, but as judges. The bridge fell silent as the implications of those words sank in. Every officer knew the stories about the humans, but they were supposed to be extinct. The idea that they had somehow survived their exile and returned was terrifying. Captain, more ships are appearing, Lieutenant Dayan reported, her voice barely above a whisper. Dozens of them, sir. Maybe hundreds. The human fleet began to emerge from what looked like tears in space itself. Each ship was different, but all shared the same impossible design that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They moved with perfect coordination, their formation so precise that they looked like a single living organism. Commander Hound watched the tactical display with growing horror. Sir, they're not using any propulsion system we can detect. They're just ... moving. And the energy readings are off the charts. Yoongi tried to maintain his composure, but the sight of the human fleet was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The ships didn't just look advanced. They looked like they came from a completely different understanding of reality. Their hulls rippled and flowed like liquid metal, and the space around them seemed to bend and twist in ways that made his head hurt. Admiral Sunyong, he transmitted, using the name the voice had given them. We are prepared to discuss terms. For peaceful contact, the hegemony has protocols for first contact situations. The response came immediately, and this time the voice carried an edge of cold anger that made every officer on the bridge take a step back. The time for discussion ended when your predecessors chose to destroy our homeworld. We have spent 500 millennia preparing for this moment. The reckoning begins now. The human ships began to demonstrate their capabilities, but they didn't attack. Instead, they simply existed, and their presence warped the space around them in ways that violated everything Yoongi knew about physics. Stars in the distance seemed to flicker and bend, and the fabric of space itself appeared to ripple like water. Sir, our instruments are detecting gravitational anomalies around each human ship, reported Lieutenant Daeon. They're somehow manipulating spacetime on a massive scale. Yoongi realized with growing dread that his fleet was completely outmatched. The hegemony's most advanced warships looked like toys compared to what the humans had become. 500,000 years of exile in the most hostile region of the galaxy had transformed them into something beyond normal understanding. All vessels maintain defensive positions, he ordered, knowing it was probably useless. And send an emergency transmission to Hegemony Command. Tell them the humans have returned, and we're in serious trouble. The human fleet continued to grow as more ships emerged from hyperspace, each one a testament to what could be achieved when a species had nothing left to lose and all the time in the universe to prepare their revenge. The human fleet moved. The galaxy like a slow-moving storm, but their approach was nothing like what anyone had expected. Instead of massive battles and destroyed worlds, it brought something far more terrifying and beautiful. Change itself. Commander Ji-ho had been stationed on the observation post near Vega Prime when the humans arrived. The Sekthar homeworld was heavily defended, with orbital weapons platforms and a fleet of warships that had never been defeated in battle. Sekthari were the most aggressive species in the galaxy, their entire culture built around warfare and conquest. They had been the ones who led the original attack on Earth 500,000 years ago, when the human ships appeared in the Vega system. The Sekthari immediately opened fire. Their weapons were powerful enough to crack planets, but the energy beams simply passed through the human vessels as if they were made of light. The humans didn't fire back. They didn't need to. Sir, something's happening to the Sekthari ships, reported Lieutenant Minsu from the sensor station. Their weapon systems are shutting down, but we're not detecting any interference signals. Ji-ho watched in amazement as the Sekthari fleet slowly powered down their weapons. But it wasn't because their technology had failed. Through the communication channels, he could hear the Sekthari commanders speaking to each other in confused voices. They were trying to fire their weapons, but they couldn't bring themselves to do it. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Sehi, who had been studying the human fleet from a safe distance. "They're not jamming the weapons. They're changing the people operating them." The transformation spread across Vega Prime like a wave. The Sekthari soldiers put down their weapons, not because they were forced to, but because they no longer wanted to fight. The violent impulses that had driven their species for thousands of years simply vanished, replaced by something else entirely. "They're not destroying civilizations," Ji-ho reported back to his superiors, his voice filled with wonder and fear. "They're evolving them. The Sekthari are still themselves, but they've lost the ability to cause harm." The process was repeated on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had participated in Earth's destruction found themselves fundamentally changed overnight. The Zephyrians, who had provided the Coalition with their most deadly weapons, suddenly became focused on healing and medicine. The Corathons, master strategists who had planned many of the attacks on human colonies, found themselves driven to create art and music instead of war plans. Dr. Sahi had been given permission to study the human techniques. What she discovered challenged everything she thought she knew about technology and consciousness. "They're not using machines as we understand them," she explained to her research team. "They've somehow merged thousands of human minds with quantum mechanics. Each ship is operated by the collective consciousness of entire generations." The revelation was staggering. The humans hadn't just survived their exile in the galactic rim. They had transcended their original limitations, becoming something that existed on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. Their ships weren't just vessels, they were extensions of their collective will, powered by the combined thoughts and memories of their entire species. But the most shocking moment came when Admiral Sun Yang addressed the entire galaxy directly. Every communication system, every holographic display, every neural interface suddenly carried her voice. She appeared not as a single person, but as a shifting image that seemed to contain the faces of countless humans throughout history. "Could have returned as conquerors," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 500,000 years of exile. "We could have destroyed every world that participated in Earth's destruction. We had the power and we had the right." The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the judgment that would reshape everything they knew. "But conquest was never our goal," Admiral Sun Yang continued. "We seek to build something greater, a galaxy worthy of the Earth we lost. We have seen what happens when species choose violence over cooperation, when fear drives policy instead of hope. The humans began to demonstrate their true capabilities. Dead worlds came back to life as their terraforming technology restored barren planets to garden paradises. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together on projects that benefited everyone. The technology that had been used to change the aggressive species was offered freely to others who wanted to improve themselves. "We offer you a choice," Admiral Sun Yang announced. "Join us in building a new kind of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. Or remain isolated in your own systems, free to continue your old ways, but unable to spread violence to others." Most species chose to join the new order. The alternative was to be cut off from the incredible advances the humans offered, to watch from the sidelines as the galaxy transformed around them. Those who had been mere bystanders during Earth's destruction were welcomed with open arms, their past sins forgiven in exchange for their commitment to the future. The reckoning had come, but it wasn't the bloody revenge most had expected. Instead, it was something far more powerful, the chance to become better than they had ever been before. The humans had returned not as destroyers but as gardeners, ready to plant the seeds of a new galactic civilization that would honor both justice and mercy. The planet had been nothing but rock and dust just 6 months earlier, a dead world floating in the void without atmosphere or life. Now it bloomed with impossible beauty, its surface covered in crystal cities that seemed to grow from the ground itself. The humans had chosen this barren world to build their new capital, and they had transformed it into something that surpassed even the legendary beauty of ancient Earth. Ambassador Minho walked through the halls of the Grand Assembly building, his footsteps echoing on floors made of some material that seemed to capture and reflect light in patterns that changed as he moved. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered here, species that had been enemies for thousands of years, now working together to create something entirely new. The assembly hall was vast, its ceiling open to the sky where 3 moons hung, like jewels against the purple twilight. Each delegate sat in chairs that adjusted automatically to their species' needs, technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. But what amazed Minho most was the atmosphere in the room. Tension, no fear, no underlying threat of violence. For the first time in galactic history, true peace existed. Admiral Sun Yang's physical avatar stood at the center of the hall, a figure that appeared human but somehow contained multitudes. Her face was calm and ageless, her eyes holding the wisdom of countless generations. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "We accept your terms for the Galactic Confederation," Minho said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. The words felt heavy with history, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. The former hegemony pledges its full support to the new order. Similar declarations followed from representatives across the galaxy. The Sectari, once the most warlike species in existence, now spoke of their plans to establish healing centers on worlds ravaged by ancient conflicts. The Zephyrians offered their advanced manufacturing capabilities to help rebuild damaged civilizations. Former enemies embraced each other as allies, their old grudges forgotten in the face of unlimited possibility. Captain Nayin of the New Terran Defense Fleet watched the proceedings with wonder. The Defense Fleet wasn't really a military organization in the traditional sense. Their ships were designed to protect and assist, not to wage war. Violence had become almost impossible between the member species, not because it was forbidden, but because the desire for it had been gently removed from their consciousness. "Look at them," she whispered to her aide, Lieutenant Wujin. 6 months ago, the Korathans and the Velians were shooting at each other over mining rights. Now they're planning joint colonies. The transformation had been complete and seemingly effortless. The humans had shared their exile technology freely, teaching other species how to terraform dead worlds and create sustainable ecosystems. Planets that had been written off as uninhabitable were now thriving garden worlds, their surfaces covered in cities that worked in harmony with nature rather than against it. Dr. Youngsu, who had been studying the human terraforming process, still couldn't fully explain how it worked. "They're not just changing the physical environment," she had reported to the assembly. "They're somehow convincing the planet itself to become what they want it to be. It's like they're speaking to the fundamental forces of creation." The ceremony reached its peak when Admiral Sunyang raised her hand for silence. The entire hall fell quiet, thousands of representatives from across the galaxy waiting for her words. "Today we begin the restoration of Earth itself," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "It's not as a monument to what was lost, but as a beacon of what can be achieved when species choose cooperation over conquest." The words sent a thrill through the assembled delegates. Earth had been destroyed 500,000 years ago, its surface turned to molten rock by the Coalition's weapons. Most had assumed it would remain a dead world forever, a reminder of the galaxy's violent past. But the humans had developed technology that could restore even the most damaged planets through the transparent ceiling. They could see the first terraforming ships departing for the Sol system. The vessels were beautiful, their hulls flowing like liquid metal as they moved through space. Each ship carried not just technology, but the collective will of humanity to heal the wound that had been inflicted on their homeworld so long ago. "The Earth will live again," Admiral Sunyang continued, "and it will serve as the heart of our new confederation. A place where all species can come to learn, to grow, and to remember that we are stronger together than we ever were apart." As the months passed, reports arrived from the Sol system describing the impossible transformation taking place. Earth's poisoned atmosphere was being cleansed, its radioactive surface restored to fertility. Oceans that had been boiled away were returning, filled with life that had been preserved in the genetic archives of the human exile ships. The final transmission came from Counselor Kungmin, speaking from the restored surface of Earth itself. His image appeared on screens across the galaxy, showing green fields stretching to the horizon and blue skies that hadn't been seen for 500,000 years. "We are home, and we are no longer alone," he said, his voice filled with joy and hope. "The galaxy is finally united, and it is beautiful. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun."